Imagine this with me for a second. You're sitting at your own table, maybe in the kitchen or your little corner space at home, and instead of stressing over how short your paycheck feels or how fast your bills pile up, you're actually working on something that you own. Something that could grow. Something that, little by little, gives you freedom. Doesn't that sound different already? Because the truth is, starting a small business at home isn't just a dream for the rich, the gifted, or the people who got lucky. It's possible for anyone who has the courage to take that first step. The biggest mistake most people make is thinking they need everything perfect before they start. Like they need a fancy office, capital in the millions, or all the right connections. But that's not how it works. Some of the most successful businesses you've ever heard of were born in kitchens, basements, and garages. They started with ideas that seemed too small, too ordinary, until they grew. The truth is, you don't need perfect conditions. You just need to see what's already in your hands. I know what you might be thinking, but I don't have resources. I don't have experience. I don't even know where to begin. And that's exactly why most people never try. But here's the shift. You don't need to have everything figured out from day one. What you need is awareness. Awareness of your own skills, your surroundings, your community, and the problems you can solve. Because a business at its core is simply about solving problems and making someone else's life a little better. Think about it. Every business you admire today, it exists because someone solved a problem. Coffee shops, they solve the problem of people needing energy and a quick break. Delivery apps, they solve the problem of people not having time to cook. Even a small neighborhood bakery solves the problem of someone craving fresh bread without wanting to make it themselves. And here's the magic. You can start solving problems right where you are, from your own home. The thing that holds us back isn't actually lack of money. It's lack of vision. When you're stuck thinking small, you'll only ever see your limitations. But when you start to ask yourself different questions like, what do people around me need? Or what can I do right now with what I already have? You'll see that opportunities are everywhere. You might have a skill that feels ordinary to you, but it's extraordinary to someone else. Maybe you cook well. Maybe you write well. Maybe you're good at organizing. Maybe you have an eye for design. What feels normal to you could be someone else's solution, and they're willing to pay for it. I'll be real with you. Starting a small business at home won't be easy. There will be doubts. There will be times you wonder if you should quit. There will be days where nothing seems to move, but here's the good part. Every single one of those moments is part of the process. In fact, those moments are what shape you. They force you to get creative, to push beyond your comfort zone, and to see yourself differently, not just as someone trying to survive, but as someone creating. And here's another thing. Don't confuse busyness with business. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're building something. So many people spend their days running in circles, exhausted but not moving forward. True business is different. It's about being intentional with your time and effort. It's about making sure that what you're doing today contributes to where you want to be tomorrow. That's the difference between staying stuck and actually growing. Now you might be wondering, okay, but what about failure? What if I try and it doesn't work? Let me tell you something. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's the pathway to it. Every person who's ever succeeded failed first. They tried, they adjusted, they learned. And that's exactly how you'll grow too. You don't need to get it all right at once. You just need to start, even if it's messy, even if it's small. Because here's the truth. If you wait until you feel ready, you'll wait forever. But if you take that first small action today, sending that message, testing that idea, creating that product, you're already ahead of 99% of people who only talk about starting but never do. And I want you to think about this carefully. What if the very thing you're praying for, the opportunity you've been waiting for, is already inside your house? What if the big break you're asking for is already in your hands, disguised as a small idea you've been ignoring? So let me ask you right now, what would it feel like to finally stop overthinking and actually build something of your own? To see your idea grow little by little into something that could support you, your family, your future. Because in this video, we're not just going to talk about starting a small business, We're going to strip away the lies, the doubts, and the overthinking that keep most people stuck. I'll show you how to see opportunity differently, how to reframe your mindset, and how to take practical steps that could change your life, even if you're starting from nothing. And before we dive deeper into the how, I want you to sit with this thought. You don't need to create something out of nothing. God already created everything. What you're creating is not a new reality, but the experience of the reality that's already available to you. The ingredients are already here. The question is, will you see them? Will you use them? Because once you do, that's when your story changes. That's when the idea of a small business at home becomes something real. And that's exactly where we'll go next. Now that we've cleared away the doubts and myths about starting a small business at home, let's go deeper into the mindset that truly separates those who only wish from those who actually do. Because let's be honest, most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they never really started with the right frame of mind. And the truth is, if your foundation isn't strong, no matter what steps you take later, the whole thing eventually crumbles. Here's the first big realization you need to embrace. Your home is not a limitation, it's a launch pad. A lot of people think working from home means you're just trying, that it's less professional or less serious. But let me ask you, where did Amazon start? A garage. Where did Apple begin? Also a garage. Where did many small local bakeries, online stores, and digital services begin? Right inside someone's kitchen, living room, or spare bedroom. Your home is the perfect place to begin because it strips away the pressure of rent, overhead, or outside expectations. It's your private training ground. But here's the catch. You need to stop treating it like a hobby. If you treat it like a side thing, you'll try when you feel like it. Then don't expect serious results. The moment you shift and say, this is my business, this is what I'm building, and I'm showing up for it every single day, your brain begins to wire itself differently. And that's the difference between those who just play around with an idea versus those who actually grow it into something real. Now let's talk about awareness again, but on a deeper level. Awareness is the seed of every successful business. Without it, you're like someone holding gold but mistaking it for dirt. You might already have the skill, the product, or even the demand in your community, but if you're not aware of it, you'll keep living as if you have nothing. That's why I often say, it's not about creating something new. It's about uncovering what's already here. For example, I knew a man once who complained about how little he earned. He was making just a few dollars an hour. But what he didn't realize is that the real limit wasn't in the money. It was in his awareness. He thought $5 was normal, because that's all he had ever seen. But once he began expanding his mind, learning from mentors, reading books, and exposing himself to new ideas, his awareness shifted. Suddenly, he saw opportunities he never noticed before. He learned that earning $5,000 an hour wasn't impossible. It was just outside the bubble he had been living in. And here's the punchline. Once he became aware of it, he couldn't unsee it. His entire reality started to change. That's exactly how starting a small business at home works. You don't suddenly wake up with all the answers, but as your awareness grows, you begin to see possibilities where others see nothing. You begin to recognize problems as opportunities. You start noticing gaps in the market, needs in your neighborhood, or skills inside you that you had been dismissing. And once you see it, you can't go back. But awareness alone isn't enough. You need action. And here's where most people trip. They confuse busyness with business. They think scrolling online, researching for hours, or endlessly planning is doing something. It's not. That's busyness. Business is when you put something out into the world that interacts with reality. When you actually test your product, sell it to someone, and get feedback. That's business. Action is the bridge between awareness and results. Here's a picture for you. Imagine someone standing by a field holding seeds. He could spend all day staring at them, researching how seeds work, planning where he'll plant them, but unless he puts them in the soil, nothing grows. That's the same with business. Ideas are seeds. They look small, fragile, even insignificant, but if you plant them, nurture them, and give them time, they grow. But if you keep them in your pocket, they rot and become useless. And here's where starting from home gives you an advantage. You don't need to overcomplicate the planting process. You already have soil around you. You already have people around you who could be your first customers. Family, neighbors, friends, your online circle. Start with them. Don't despise small beginnings. Don't underestimate the power of testing your idea on a tiny scale, because every great business began that way. Now let me guide your subconscious here. Don't think of starting as this massive, overwhelming leap. Think of it as an experiment, a playful test, something light. If you cook, start with 5 orders for your neighbors. If you design, make a logo for someone at a low rate. If you sell, try posting a small product online. Don't pressure yourself into making it big right away. Just prove to yourself that you can take an idea, put it into action, and see a result. That small win rewires your brain to trust yourself. And that trust is priceless. And let me tell you something. When you're consistent, those small wins compound. What seems like just a tiny effort today becomes the foundation of something you couldn't even imagine years later. That's why awareness plus consistent action equals transformation. Not overnight, but guaranteed. Now here's the part people don't like to hear. You will face distractions. The world is full of noise, social media, endless entertainment, the comparison game. If you're more aware of distractions than your vision, your manifestation will only be distractions. That's why focus is everything. Focus is how you separate yourself from the 99% of people who waste their energy chasing what doesn't matter. Focus turns your home into a workshop, your time into investment, your effort into progress. The truth is, your environment plays a massive role here. If you surround yourself with clutter, noise, and negativity, your business will suffocate. But if you surround yourself with reminders of abundance, order, and possibility, your subconscious begins to align with your vision. That's why things like gratitude journaling, scripture, testimonies, and even simply organizing your workspace matter more than you think. They don't just keep you motivated, they program your subconscious to stay aligned. And now, let me open a window for you. Once you understand this flow of awareness, action, and environment, you realize something profound. You were never lacking. You already had everything you needed to start. The only missing piece was awareness. And now that you're aware, you can't go back. But here's where I want to leave you with an open loop. If awareness and focus are the foundation, what about resilience? Because let's be real, you can start, you can focus, but what happens when life hits back? What happens when you face rejection, failure, or resistance? That's where the real test of your small business begins. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into next. Here's the thing most people miss when they search how to start a small business at home. They think the answer lies in the step-by-step mechanics, the how. What platform should I sell on? How much capital do I need? How do I design a logo? These are valid questions, but here's the uncomfortable truth. None of the how matters if you don't know why. Because the why is your anchor. It's the thing that holds you steady when everything else feels like it's falling apart. Without it, even the best strategies crumble. And I've seen it over and over again. People who had the perfect blueprint, the exact step-by-step, the same tools as successful entrepreneurs, but they quit. Not because the plan failed, but because their why wasn't strong enough to carry them through the storms. Think of it like this. The why is the soil, and the how is the foundation you build on that soil. If your soil is loose, like sand, then no matter how good your foundation looks, one strong wind or one heavy rain will collapse the entire structure. That's why some businesses look promising at first, but vanish after one crisis. They were built on shallow soil. Or take the tree analogy. The why is the root. The how is the trunk. A tree can look tall, strong, and straight, but if its roots don't run deep, one storm will knock it flat. But if the roots are deep, that tree can withstand winds, droughts, even years of tough weather, and it will still stand. That's exactly how a small business at home works. The visible part, the trunk, the branches, the leaves, that's your how, your daily actions, your visible progress. But the invisible part, your roots, your why, is what actually sustains the whole thing. So before you ask what business is good to start, flip the question, why am I building this? What's driving me? Because here's the reality, there is no perfect business. Every business has its problems. Selling food, you'll deal with spoilage, customer complaints, delivery issues. Selling clothes, you'll handle returns, changing trends, sizing headaches. Selling services, you'll face demanding clients, long hours, and constant learning. If your only reason is because I thought this business was good, you won't last. The moment it gets hard, you'll walk away. But if your reason is deeper, something rooted in your vision, you won't just survive. You'll grow through the struggle. Maybe your why is to provide for your family so they never go through what you went through. Maybe your why is to prove to yourself that you're capable of more than what your environment told you. Maybe your why is to create something meaningful that outlives you. Whatever it is, that's the fuel you'll return to when the how feels overwhelming. This is why I always tell new entrepreneurs, don't just chase opportunity, chase purpose. The how will eventually reveal itself when your why is clear. Because when your why is powerful enough, you'll naturally search for solutions. You'll naturally adapt, innovate, and endure. But if your why is weak, no matter how simple the how is, you'll find an excuse not to follow through. Let me give you an example. Imagine two people starting the same small baking business from home. One says, I want to try this because I saw someone online making money selling pastries. That's their why. Shallow. The other says, I want to build this because I want to give my kids a better life. And I want them to see that I can create something from nothing so they'll believe they can too. That's their why. Which one do you think will still be baking at 3 a.m. after a long day, even when sales are slow? The one with a deep root system. And here's the kicker. Most entrepreneurs don't fail because they lack skill or resources. They fail because they forget their why. They get distracted by problems, by comparisons, by doubt, and their root system withers. That's why resilience doesn't come from discipline alone. It comes from clarity of purpose. When you know your why, discipline becomes natural. It doesn't feel forced. It feels inevitable. And that's also why so many entrepreneurs confuse action with progress. They collect information, attend webinars, watch tutorials, knowing the how, but they never truly commit because their why isn't burning inside them. Knowing the how without living the why is like owning a map but never stepping out the door. You know the direction, but you don't move. So let me guide your subconscious with this. Before you ask yourself what you should sell or how you'll structure your business, sit down and answer the bigger question. Why am I building this? Write it down. Feel it. See it in your mind. Because once you do, every how will fall into place. And here's the secret. The how always changes. Platforms come and go. Tools evolve, strategies shift, but your why remains. That's why it's the only thing worth anchoring yourself to. And let me close this part with a simple truth. Starting a small business at home is not really about products or services. It's about identity. Who are you becoming in the process? The why shapes your identity, and your identity shapes your actions. Once you understand that, you'll realize you don't have to chase success. You just have to grow into the person who naturally creates it. Here's what I want you to understand. If you're still asking, what's a good business to start? You're already limiting yourself. Because that question assumes the power is in the business itself, as if there's one perfect formula that guarantees success. But the truth is, success doesn't come from the business. It comes from the person who runs it. Think about it. You could hand two people the same exact blueprint, same product, same marketing strategy, same suppliers. One person will succeed and the other will quit. Why? Because it's not about the plan, it's about the person executing the plan. That's why I keep telling people, stop obsessing over what business is best. Start asking, what kind of business person am I becoming? Because who you are will determine what you can sustain, what you can create, and how far you can grow. If your identity is built on fear, you'll play small, no matter how big the opportunity is. If your identity is built on doubt, you'll second-guess every decision until the business dies from hesitation. But if your identity is built on resilience, on vision, on faith, you can take an ordinary business and turn it into something extraordinary. Here's where the be do have principle becomes so important. Most people live their lives flipped upside down. They believe, if I have the right capital, then I can do the business, and then I'll be successful. Or if I have the right opportunity, then I'll do the work, and then I'll be the person I want to be. But life doesn't work that way. That's a formula for frustration. The real formula is be first, then do, then have. Who you are shapes what you do, and what you do consistently shapes what you have. And this isn't just business, it's every part of life. If you want a healthy body, you don't just copy someone's workout plan. You first become the kind of person who values health. Then you do the habits, eating clean, exercising, resting well. And only then do you have the results. If you try to start from the have stage, you'll keep chasing shortcuts and wonder why nothing sticks. It's the same with starting a small business at home. You could spend hours searching for the most profitable idea. But if you haven't transformed who you are, your mindset, your discipline, your faith, no idea will save you. The moment hardship shows up, you'll walk away. Let me give you a simple analogy. Imagine a tree again. The roots are your being. The trunk and branches are your doing. The fruit is your having. People love to talk about the fruit, money, freedom, lifestyle, but few are willing to grow roots. Roots are invisible. Roots are slow. Roots require patience. But without them, the tree cannot stand. And here's the thing most people don't realize. Roots don't grow during the harvest. They grow during the storms. In business, it's not when everything is going well that your being is tested. It's when you face rejection, when sales drop, when doubt creeps in. That's when you discover what kind of business person you really are. This is why knowing your why is so connected to your identity. If you don't know why you're building, you'll always crumble when it gets tough. But if your why is anchored in something deeper than money, like your family, your mission, your God-given purpose, you'll stand firm. You'll keep pushing even when the how isn't clear, because your why won't let you quit. And here's the beauty of it. Once you anchor into your why, the how becomes lighter. You stop asking, what's the shortcut, or what's the easy way? Instead, you become the kind of person who naturally finds solutions, adapts to challenges, and creates results. I remember when I first started realizing this, my perspective shifted completely. I stopped looking at what was trending or profitable and started looking at myself. Who was I becoming? Was I disciplined enough to handle responsibility? Was I resilient enough to push through rejection? Was I creative enough to adapt when things changed? That identity work was more important than any step-by-step guide I could have followed. And this is where many entrepreneurs fail without even realizing it. They spend all their energy chasing information, the next tutorial, the next strategy, the next trick, while neglecting the deeper question, am I becoming the person who can carry this vision? Because here's the truth. The how is mechanical. Anybody can learn it. You can Google how to set up an online shop, how to register a business, how to market on social media. Those things aren't secrets. What separates winners from quitters isn't information, it's identity. So let me guide you here. Before you chase the next idea, sit with this question. Who am I becoming in this process? Because if your identity grows, your business will grow with it. If your being strengthens, your doing will align. And when your doing aligns, your having will multiply. That's why I don't believe in asking, what's the best business to start? The better question is, how do I become the best version of myself so that whatever business I choose, I'll make it thrive? And let me tell you, when you start from there, the whole game changes. Suddenly, you're not chasing opportunities, you're creating them. You're not at the mercy of trends, you're shaping them. Because opportunities don't make the entrepreneur, entrepreneurs make the opportunities. So if you've been stuck, if you've been waiting for the perfect idea to drop from the sky, I want to challenge you. Stop waiting. Start becoming. Shift your focus from what should I do to who should I be? Because once you answer that question, every how will find its way to you. You know, I didn't always understand this. Back then, I was the kind of person who kept jumping from one thing to another. I was distracted, always chasing whatever trend looked shiny at the moment. If a business idea popped up on social media, I was already trying it the next day. And here's the truth. I thought I was being entrepreneurial. But what I was really being was impatient. I had this pattern that was killing me without me realizing it. I would try something, and if I didn't see results in a month, I quit. I started another business, then quit again. And before I knew it, I wasn't building anything. I was just running in circles. What I was really building was an identity of quitting. I became that person who could never stick to anything beyond 30 days, and because of that, nothing in my life had roots. Then one day it hit me. I realized this wasn't about the businesses, it was about me. The problem wasn't that the opportunities were bad. It was that my being, my identity, wasn't rooted in the right soil. And that's when I stumbled into this principle we've been talking about, the be, do, have. When I gained awareness of this, it was like something inside me flipped. Suddenly, I understood my why. My why wasn't just about money. It was about building something I could be proud of, something that could feed my family, something that would prove to myself that I wasn't meant to be a quitter. And once that why got clear, I started disciplining myself. I told myself, this time, no matter how long it takes, I'm going to stay. I'm going to water this seed until it grows. That was the turning point. Because when your why is strong enough, your how starts to make sense. Discipline stops feeling like a prison and starts feeling like freedom. The second thing I learned was this. When you're starting, you can't obsess over what you don't have. And this one was big for me. Because like many people, I thought, if only I had capital, then I could really start. I kept telling myself I couldn't move forward because I didn't have investors, I didn't have savings, I didn't have resources. But then I remembered something. In God's design, nothing is missing. All resources are already created. Everything we need is already somewhere, maybe right in front of us. The problem is awareness. So instead of crying about what I lacked, I started looking at what I had. And you know what I had? Bread. Literally. My family had a bread delivery business. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't trending, it wasn't the kind of thing you see going viral on TikTok, but it was something. And when I shifted my focus from what I didn't have to what I did, I realized I could build from there. So I took what was in my hand, and I started. I didn't wait for perfect conditions, I didn't wait for investors, I didn't wait for someday. I took bread deliveries and brought them online. I converted what was small and ordinary into something that had the potential to multiply. And here's the crazy part. What once looked like not enough turned into more than enough. That small step grew into a business that now makes more than 6 figures per month. And it didn't come from chasing trends. It came from sticking with something long enough for the roots to grow, and from trusting that what God had already placed in my hand was enough to start. See, that's the principle. God doesn't ask you to start with what you don't have. He asks you to recognize what He's already given you. The oil in the widow's jar, the 5 loaves and 2 fish, the staff in Moses' hand. It's never about what's missing. It's about what's already there, waiting to be multiplied when you step in faith. And that's what I want you to see in your own journey. You might be looking at your life right now thinking, I don't have enough to start. But the truth is, you do. You might not see it because you're focused on what's absent, but I promise you it's there. It might look small, it might look ordinary, but if you can shift your awareness, if you can attach your why to it, if you can discipline yourself to stay through the seasons, it can grow into something that changes your life. That's how I went from being the guy who quit every month to someone who now runs a 6-figure per month business. Not because I discovered a magic business, but because I discovered myself. Because I stopped chasing and I started becoming. Because I stopped crying about what I didn't have and started building with what I did. And the lesson in all of this is simple but powerful. God already created everything. The resources are already here. Nothing is missing. The only question is, can you see it? And once you see it, will you stick with it long enough for it to multiply?